tonight, Donald Trump wrapping up what may be the most disciplined week of his presidential campaign, delivering his fourth major speech in just 5 days. A move suggesting to some that we may finally be seeing the presidential version of himself that he's been promising for so long. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Sandra Smith, in for Megyn Kelly tonight. Trump's speech in Michigan just a short time ago was the fourth time he used a teleprompter this week, an unusual move for a candidate beloved for his shoot-from-the-hip politics. But this was no usual week for the GOP nominee. Not only did we learn today that campaign guru Paul Manafort was resigning, it came just days after Trump rocked the political world by appointing Breitbart chairman Stephen Bannon and strategist Kellyanne Conway to fill some major holes in his campaign. But despite all of the distractions, many are suggesting that the Donald Trump we've been hearing from this week, although different and perhaps a little dry, may be the version his party has been waiting to hear from for months.
Families trapped in welfare will be provided with jobs and opportunity. Children stuck in failing government schools will be able to attend the school of their choice. Government will become lean, effective, responsible, and honest. No one will be above the law. In a Trump administration, the State Department will work for the country, not for Hillary Clinton's donors. And I will work for you, and I will work for no one else. I will work for you. I will never lie to you. I will never put any other interest before you, and I will never, ever stop fighting for you. Never.
Chief political correspondent Carl Cameron is live in Dimondale, Michigan, where it was all happening earlier today, with more on that. Hey, Carl.
Hi, Sandra. Quiet here now, but it was raucous just a couple of hours ago. Donald Trump had a big rally here, used a teleprompter, made a number of statements, political statements about African Americans, took on Hillary Clinton and took on President Obama, and none of the crowd seemed to mind at all that he was using a teleprompter. In fact, he's gotten very good reviews for having done so, even from some folks who used to think that, as Trump said, you could never use a teleprompter at a rally, but it's gone pretty well for him this week. Earlier today, he was in Louisiana, and when he got here tonight, one of the things that he did was point out while he got down to Louisiana and look at the floods, President Obama's been in Martha's Vineyard on vacation, and suggested that it was almost a dereliction of the president's duty to have not gotten there sooner. Watch.
I just got back from a tour of the suffering and devastation in Louisiana. The spirit of the people is incredible. The devastation, likewise, they've never seen anything like it. But the spirit of the people is incredible. And honestly, Obama ought to get off the golf course and get down there.
President's been doing a lot of that golfing. Yesterday, he was out on the golf course with the comedian Larry David. But the White House has said that the president, when he gets back from vacation, will go to Louisiana this coming Tuesday. That said, the morning and the tour was somewhat overshadowed by yet another shakeup in the Trump campaign. Paul Manafort offered his resignation, and Donald Trump said that he accepted it, although it was fairly evident last week when both Kellyanne Conway as well as Steve Bannon were added to the campaign roster of executive and manager that Manafort had been layered. And for all intents and purposes in the Trump campaign, when you get pushed aside by other people who are brought in above you, it's time to leave, and that's what Manafort decided to do. He'd run into some problems, too. There was a tremendous amount of press coverage and a lot of Democratic criticism. News reports that he had gotten very close to a pro-Russian political party in Ukraine and might have even gotten involved with some organized crime figures and not properly disclosed it on American lobbyist disclosure forms. That was the kind of distraction that even Eric Trump said his father couldn't really have and didn't want to have around in the campaign anymore. So Manafort's out. Kellyanne Conway, the campaign manager, clearly has been calling the shots this week, doing a lot of interviews and talking about how Trump would be more substantive, dealing with policy, less name calling. And we have heard a considerable decrease in the name calling. Instead of calling Clinton crooked Hillary at every single utterance, he has taken to occasionally calling him his opponent. So he's trying to act more presidential. There is still
immigration, and we will be tough, and we will be even extreme. We should only admit into this country those who share our values and respect our people.
I will be your champion. I will be your voice in the White House. We will bring it back. We will once again be a country of law and order to every parent who dreams for their children, and every child who dreams for their future. I say these words to you tonight. I'm with you, I will fight for you, and I will win for you. Sometimes, in the heat of debate and speaking on a multitude of issues, you don't choose the right words, or you say the wrong thing. I have done that, and believe it or not, I regret it, and I do regret it, particularly where it may have caused personal pain.
All right, Guy Benson is political editor at townhall.com. Teslin Figaro is a former Bernie Sanders campaign staffer. Rick Cannell is a former spokesman to four U.S. ambassadors to the UN. I'll start with you first. Rick, was this a big week for Donald Trump? A good week for Donald Trump?
Yeah, I think it was a fantastic week. He made some necessary changes, and he started talking about specific policies. Look, I know a lot of East Coast reporters want to talk about process here in the teleprompter, but a teleprompter only allows you to get more detailed, and that's exactly what Trump is doing. These policies are Donald Trump policies. They're policies of change. They're policies against the last 8 years of President Obama. And they distinguish himself against what Hillary Clinton is going to do. He's out there, and Hillary Clinton is following him. Hillary has had to catch up there in New York and call in some police chiefs to her. She didn't go out there. She didn't go to the flood zone. So I think Donald Trump has owned the week.
Yeah, and Teslin, he covered a lot of ground. 4 major speeches in 5 days. I want to talk to you about his, as Carl Cameron pointed out, his appeal to the black voters in that speech in Michigan today. He's made a very specific call, asking for the vote of every single African-American voter. Listen.
Tonight, I'm asking for the vote of every single African-American citizen in this country who wants to see a better future. And at the end of 4 years, I guarantee you that I will get over 95% of the African-American vote. I promise you.
That's a big guarantee considering where he is right now, Teslin. Clinton leading Trump among black voters in a big way. Clinton and King getting 87% of that vote. Trump and Pence just getting 4% of the black vote. Where do you think where is he coming from on that?
Well, I think it's important for him to at least, ask. A lot of times I say that it's great to even at least ask for the vote. Now, just being honest, as a campaign staffer, when you have 90% of African Americans who consistently vote Democrat time and time again, it may not be worth, just being honest, begging for votes that you may not ever get. So, at least he did, ask the question on this week. But more importantly, it's important that African Americans ask themselves the questions, are we better off than where we were 8 years ago? And the bottom line is African American poverty has risen. The bottom line is 4 out of 10 children are hungry and still in poverty. So those are the questions that we still need to, ask ourselves. So I think it goes away from more or less not just asking what politicians are asking us, but what we should be asking ourselves and asking of those politicians. So I think it was a good move to make. Whether he's successful or not in it, we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll see if there's any change that does come out of that. And Donald Trump tweeting out just a few moments ago after he delivered this speech, Guy, thank you, Michigan. This is a movement. He had a lively crowd there today, Guy. He had people excited. People are, as we just heard from Rick, this has been a great week for Donald Trump. Is this a turning point? Dare I ask that question?
Well, we've heard it so many times, and people say, oh, this is finally that presidential pivot, and then the rug gets snatched out from under us. So color me skeptical, but I will agree with what Rick said in the premise of your question, which is, despite the fact that his campaign chairman resigned under a major ethical cloud, even in spite of that, this was probably the most successful week in memory from the Trump campaign, because he's gotten a little bit more serious. His speech in North Carolina was probably the best one I've seen of his entire presidential bid. And so I also think the jiu-jitsu politically going down to Louisiana, that was a smart move as well, politically savvy, softening Donald Trump's image. So my hat is off to Kellyanne Conway. She's made a very clear difference very, very quickly.
So let's talk about that, Rick, because we know Paul Manafort is out. That was the big news today. And who is in? Stephen Bannon, the Breitbart chairman, is now there, and Kellyanne Conway, as Guy just mentioned. What impact are they going to have? How are they going to change, or will they seek to change Donald Trump?
Well, first of all, let's say congratulations to Donald Trump for appointing the first female campaign manager for a GOP nominee. That message is not getting out there. He's not getting the credit for that appointment. Kellyanne is a fantastic pick as campaign manager. Look, I think that the two of them together, Bannon and Kellyanne, are a good force, because Trump has had a problem with convincing people like my friend Guy here that they should join the Trump campaign. We need more Republicans. That's where he's going to do better. And by having Bannon and Kellyanne, two well-known hardcore conservatives, I think it's going to send a powerful message.
Rick, was that sarcasm on a Friday night?
No. Guy and I are very good friends, and we're on different sides of this issue.
Well, we'll get Guy back in here in a second.
But it sounded to me like he's coming along.
We're on the same side against Hillary Clinton. That's for sure.
That's true.
Okay, so you've made that point clear. But Tesla, none of this does any good if we don't start to see a change in the polls. Whether or not the polls are accurate and they really matter, we're going to talk about that later in the show. But that is what we have to work off of right now. And the momentum has been in favor of Hillary Clinton, has it not?
It has, but I guess I disagree with most people about it being, great to talk from the teleprompters. Donald Trump is 70 years old. Let's just be honest about it. You get what you get. It is what it is. You either like it, love it, or you want more of it, or you go support somebody else. He certainly didn't hire the founder of Sesame Street this week with Mr. Bannon. So I think the gloves are going to come off. He's going to go right back to being Trump and play to his base, not those who will never vote for him. Just in all honesty, we did the same thing with the Bernie Sanders campaign. It is a numbers game. It is a matrix game. He's going to play to the people who already support him, bring out the Trump, take off the gloves, and let Mr. Bannon do exactly what he wants
Rick,
to do.
I see you trying to jump in, but I'm going to give your friend, Guy, the last word here.
Yeah.
There's so much to respond to. I think let's reconvene. Let's reconvene on this program 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, and see how we look back on the pivot. I think there are a lot of Republicans in Washington, D.C., down ticket from Donald Trump in the Senate and House, who are praying on their knees every night that this truly is a new Trump.
Guy, did you just invite yourself back onto the show?
No, I wouldn't want to be presumptuous, but it can be discussed by someone on the show. How about that?
You're a friend of the show, I'm sure. So, all right, thanks to all three of you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Good to have you. All right, coming up, victims of deadly flooding in Louisiana get an unexpected visit from Donald Trump. As we now learn, the president will soon follow suit. Did the GOP nominee pressure President Obama into action? Mark Thiessen and Richard Fowler join us with their reaction on that. Plus, Hillary Clinton reportedly blaming one of America's most respected men in her ongoing email scandal. Today, Colin Powell responding, suggesting that she leave him out of it.
I did not email any classified material to anyone on my email. There is no classified material.
Own country who have a very long and tough road ahead of them. Sandra.
All right, Casey, thank you. Donald Trump's tour of flood-damaged Louisiana included a stop at a Baptist church with evangelical leader Tony Perkins. And the GOP nominee was caught on a hot mic knocking President Obama for playing golf during the disaster.
The president said he doesn't want to go. He's trying to get out of a golf game.
Well, I heard he was trying to stay under par while we're underwater.
He'll never be under par.
Mark Thiessen, former chief speechwriter for President George W. Bush and Fox News contributor, and Richard Fowler is a nationally syndicated radio talk show host. Mark, I'll start with you first. Here Donald Trump is. He's running for president. He's on the ground in Baton Rouge before not only his opponent Hillary Clinton, who's taking some rest, he's on the ground before the president himself. What does that look like?
Well, it's remarkable. If you remember, Donald Trump promised us that he wasn't going to start acting presidential. Well, today, he was more presidential than the President of the United States. While Barack Obama was on his 8th round of golf in 12 days, Donald Trump was on the ground, hugging victims, touring the devastation, and most importantly, using his bully pulpit to shine a spotlight on this tragedy. This is the worst natural disaster since Hurricane Sandy. Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, not only have they not gone, they hadn't even gone to a microphone to say a word to the people of Louisiana. There's been almost no press coverage of this, and Donald Trump single-handedly changed that, and he got bipartisan praise for it. Senator Mary Landrieu, who's a former Democratic senator from Louisiana, Hillary Clinton supporter, thanked Donald Trump and said that Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama should follow suit, and Barack Obama's only going after Donald Trump went. When he didn't.
And it's hard, based on what we're seeing, Richard, not to throw to this sound of then Senator Obama back in 2008 criticizing George Bush for doing a flyover of Hurricane Katrina damage. Listen.
We can talk about what happened for a few days in 2005, and we should. We can talk about levees that couldn't hold, about a FEMA that seemed not just incompetent, but paralyzed and powerless, about a president who only saw the people from the window of an airplane instead of down here on the ground.
He was criticizing him for not getting on the ground when he was trying to avoid a distraction in a similar way that Hillary Clinton said she doesn't want to go there yet because she doesn't want to be a distraction. Does a different standard apply here, Richard?
No, there's not a different standard at all. I think that was candidate Obama, and this is now 8 years after President Obama, and there's a distinction between those two times. Here's what we know, and Mark's worked in the White House, and he knows that, is any time the president moves, almost an entire city moves behind him. Beyond that, when he moves into a region, to like Baton Rouge, right, where the expressways are all shut down, only for rescue vehicles. When the president gets there, those rescue vehicles can no longer move, right? So the president going is actually hampering the recovery more so than helping the recovery.
I mean, the Baton Rouge newspaper, The Advocate, they're calling for the president to come down there. Okay, he has announced since then that he is going to be down there next Tuesday.
He sent his Homeland Security Secretary and his FEMA director down there as well.
This is what Hillary Clinton says as to why she's not going down there. She actually put out a Facebook posting saying just that. She doesn't want to be a distraction. She says, my heart breaks for Louisiana, and right now the relief effort can't afford any distractions. Okay, so based on Richard's point, is that fair?
Of course not. Look, I want to ask Richard, were you saying that in 2005 when George W. Bush was getting hammered for doing the flyover? Were you taking on Barack Obama for saying that you can't see people from the sky? Hold on, wait. I'm not finished. Hold on. That when Barack Obama said that, you know, you can't see the people of Louisiana from a golf course in Martha's Vineyard. At least George W. Bush was on his way home from Crawford from his vacation to manage the recovery.
Ranch, right.
Barack Obama, yeah. No, they were both on vacation when the disasters happened. The difference is,
and Barack Obama has met with his Homeland Security Secretary, and he's met with his FEMA director. Well, the president has been over and over again every day with his Homeland Security Secretary, which has been to the region, as well as his FEMA director. Wait a minute, that has also been to the region. What the news tells us from the Bush case is that the FEMA director was an utter failure during Katrina, which is a complete difference in this FEMA director. Right. Number three, and most importantly, and I think the most important things that folks need to understand is, even though Donald Trump went there, because his plane was there, what safety plane couldn't land? What plane with resources couldn't land? Right. What police officers were taken off the street helping the survivors?
It's a devastating situation. We know that there are 13 deaths related
not at all,
to this.
Mark, not at all.
Hold on. We've had our final political thoughts there. It is absolute devastation down there, and these people have a long road to recovery. So we hope everybody does their part and chips in. All right, thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
Richard and Mark. All right, Hillary Clinton reportedly dragging former Secretary of State Colin Powell into her ongoing email scandal, and he wants no part of it. Plus, under mounting criticism, a surprise concession from the Clintons' family charity. But only if Hillary becomes president. Peter Schweitzer has studied the Clinton Foundation for years. He says this is too little, too late.
I don't think there's anything sinister in trying to get wealthy people and countries that are seriously involved in development to spend their money wisely in a way that helps poor people and lifts them up. I don't think there's anything bad with that.
Developing tonight, one of America's most respected men dragged into the ongoing scandal over Hillary Clinton's private email server. Mrs. Clinton reportedly telling FBI investigators that former Secretary of State Colin Powell encouraged her to use a private email account. Secretary Powell suggests that's news to him. Fox's Jennifer Griffin has a story from Washington. Hey, Jennifer.
Sandra, leaks from Hillary Clinton's FBI interview in which she says former Secretary of State Colin Powell told her during a party at Madeleine Albright's to use a private email account at the State Department, forced a spokesman for Powell to respond today. Quote, General Powell has no recollection of the dinner conversation. He did write former Secretary Clinton an email memo describing his use of his personal AOL email account for unclassified messages and how it vastly improved communications within the State Department. Powell went on to say, at the time, there was not an unclassified email system in the State Department. That had changed by the time Clinton was Secretary of State. All of this coming one day after the Clinton Foundation announced that if Secretary Clinton is elected president, Bill Clinton will no longer give paid speeches and the foundation will stop accepting donations from foreign governments and corporations. Tonight, in an unexpected move, federal Judge Emmett Sullivan ruled lawyers for Judicial Watch can question Hillary Clinton under oath about her private email server and that Clinton must answer written questions from the group in the coming weeks. A spokesman for the group responded, quote, we would have preferred live testimony in a deposition, but we have questions composed and that will create a sworn record. Clinton campaign spokesman Brian Fallon responded in kind, quote, Judicial Watch is a right-wing organization that has been attacking the Clintons since the 1990s. This is just another lawsuit intended to try to hurt Hillary Clinton's campaign, and so we are glad that the judge has accepted our offer to answer these questions in writing rather than grant Judicial Watch's request. Clinton will not have to answer follow-up questions. Sandra?
All right, Jennifer, thank you. Joining me now, Peter Schweitzer, who quite literally wrote the book on the Clinton Foundation. He is also president of the Government Accountability Institute and author of Clinton Cash, the untold story of how and why foreign governments and businesses helped make Bill and Hillary rich. All right, good of you to be here this evening. So first of all, what do you make of all the latest here as far as her blaming Colin Powell for things happening around with her emails?
Well, you know, it's remarkable. I mean, it fits the Clinton pattern about oftentimes blaming other people or not wanting to take responsibility. It's the same thing with the Clinton Foundation. You know, they've been kicking and dragging over the last 18 months that it's was inappropriate for her as Secretary of State to take foreign money. And only now are they admitting that maybe it doesn't look good if she becomes president. The problem, if it's not appropriate to do while you're president, why was it appropriate to do while she was Secretary of State?
All right, so she's making some changes here, and there's still a lot of questions surrounding all of this. But this now, that if she wins, the Clinton Foundation will stop these foreign donations. Is this too little, too late?
Yeah, I think it is too little too late for a couple of reasons. First of all, back in 2008, they actually signed certain ethics agreements and completely violated those. So I don't think it's enough for them to make this pledge that they wouldn't take the money. I don't think we can have confidence that they would honor it. The second thing I would say is, you know, the way that the Clinton Foundation is structured, they actually have foreign foundations in India, in Singapore, in Sweden. They could quite literally circumvent this requirement by simply having the donations go to those foundations rather than the main Clinton Foundation itself. So I'm very skeptical that they're sincere about this or that it really reflects any kind of change in their thinking. I think they just basically got caught. They got a lot of criticism for it, and now they're trying to avoid the issue.
And by the way, when I say there's still a lot of unanswered questions, what about Bill Clinton, his accepting money, a lot of money for these paid speeches? Will that come to an end if she's elected president?
Yeah, I mean, it's up in the air. You know, Bill Clinton has said repeatedly he was not going to change a thing, that it was still appropriate for him to take this money. You know, they may make a statement that he's not going to take foreign money. But again, remember, back in 2008, they literally signed an agreement with Barack Obama that they would disclose all donations and that there would be no intermingling between the Clinton Foundation and the State Department. They completely shredded that agreement. So any commitment they make now, I don't think we should have any confidence that they're actually going to honor.
All right, Peter Schweitzer, thanks for joining us tonight. Good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Here now with a different take is Bud Jackson. He is a Democratic strategist and chairman of American Working Families PAC. But there's a very natural question that comes up after that conversation that we just had with Peter Schweitzer, and that is, if they're conceding that it's not okay to receive these donations if she's elected president, why was it okay for her family's charity to be accepting these donations as Secretary of State?
Well, why don't we start off with talking about your previous guest, who presents himself as an independent arbiter. The fact is that the book he published and then the movie he did after that, the documentary, was supported by Breitbart, a right-wing organization. So he's not exactly independent.
All right, so you've made your case against him, but let's answer the question.
One more point. His film, so-called documentary, was also partially funded by Steve Bannon, who is now Trump's top advisor, and nobody has disclosed that.
Okay.
So let's not look at him as an independent arbiter.
All right.
Now, to answer your question, look, she has now decided that the time she made mistakes before with her doing the server. She did not blame Colin Powell for what she did. She asked Colin Powell for guidance, which would indicate an intent to do the right thing and to play by the rules.
No, she essentially said he did it, and he suggested it was okay if she did it. But people are suggesting there's parallels. She's suggesting there's parallels to the way that they operated as Secretary of State. But the Washington Point very eloquently points out today that there's very clear differences between Hillary Clinton and Colin Powell in the way they operated with their emails. Clinton exclusively had a private email account to conduct State Department business. Powell did not. Clinton had a private email server located at her house. Powell did not. This is the beginning of the list of how these are not the same.
Just because Powell did it one way doesn't mean that Hillary did it wrong another way. Although I will say this. Using the private server was wrong. Nobody is going to debate that anymore. Hillary Clinton has even said that she's sorry for doing it. So voters have already had this beaten into them for months. They already understand this. It's already reflecting in their current mood and how they feel about her.
There are many who argue you don't just exchange classified information on a private home server and then say you're sorry and move
we've been
on.
Talking about this for the last several months.
So
it's
then
not
we should
a new
stop.
revelation.
Is that what you're suggesting? We shouldn't talk about it
No, I'm saying that people can keep talking about it, but most voters are already aware of this. They've already reached their conclusion whether or not they trust Hillary Clinton. And as of right now, I'll add, more voters trust Hillary Clinton than they do her opponent, Donald Trump.
All right. Good of you to be on tonight. Bud Jackson, thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, Donald Trump continues to trail Hillary Clinton in several nationwide polls, but his campaign insists that rallies are a better predictor of his support than public polling. Chris Stirewalt, Jason Osborne, and Richard Lowry join us for a Kelly File Power panel on this Friday night. That's next. Donald Trump's campaign dismissing recent polls showing the GOP nominee lagging behind Democrat rival Hillary Clinton in a general election matchup. The Real Clear Politics average puts Clinton's lead over Trump at 6 points. But in an interview earlier this week, campaign aide Michael Cohen pled ignorance.
But you guys are down. And it makes sense that there would...
Says who?
Most of them. All of them?
Says who?
All right. Joining me now, Chris Stirewalt, Fox News digital politics editor, Jason Osborne, former senior communications strategist for Dr. Ben Carson's presidential campaign, and Rich Lowry, editor of National Review and Fox News contributor. Chris, that was such an odd, uncomfortable exchange. Why deny? I mean, I don't know. Why deny the polls?
Some days you eat the bear, and some days the bear eats you. Mr. Cohen had a bad outing, and I think he probably expected that he was going to be able to do what the Trump campaign has generally done, and also losing campaigns have done throughout history, which is refute specific polls. Oh, that poll had too many Democrats. That poll smelled like old skunks. I don't like that poll, or this, that, or the other thing. But the reality is there hasn't been a poll in a long time that has shown Donald Trump doing anything but trailing Hillary Clinton. And as long as his campaign doesn't confront that fact with their supporters, it's going to be hard to make the changes and do the things that they need to do.
Yeah, I mean, Jason, I kind of remember on Trump's way up, every shocking poll after another that showed him, in the lead, he cited those polls. So why now? Why is his campaign choosing to say that the polls are wrong?
Well, I would take a different look at it from my perspective in the sense that I don't necessarily think that they are wrong. I think it's a much tighter race in many places than the polls are showing. But primarily because, this is August, and August is a time where families are trying to finish their summer and get ready for school. So they're really not, a snapshot of what it's going to be like in November. So I don't think that Trump and his campaign are necessarily looking at these polls and saying, all right, we're gonna lose this badly and we need to tell our supporters. I think what they're doing is they're going to these rallies, they're energizing people at these rallies and ensuring that they are the ones that get out after Labor Day to try and turn out the vote. And then we'll see, as you've seen over the last week, the poll numbers have sort of have gotten a little bit closer. The LA Times has one that has Trump within 2. But again, I don't look at the overall number. I look at
with that
the
statement.
crosstabs.
Chris, jump in.
Well, that's not a poll. That's a group of, I think, 3,000 people. That's not, well, I'll put it this way. That's not a survey that we would use or be reliable. He is doing better. Pew Research had a poll out. He is within 4 in that poll, which is an improvement for him. So he is doing somewhat better.
All right. So, Rich, let me get you in here because Mike Pence, his running mate, has said multiple times in the past week or two that it's still early. Is it still early in this campaign? Is there still time for a major turnaround considering where the polls are today?
Well, it's still August, so there's still time. And I think if you actually look at what the campaign is doing, as opposed to what some of the surrogates and supporters out there are saying, the campaign knows and believes that it's behind. This is a campaign clearly this week that was not acting like it's ahead. It had a major shakeup. It had some new messaging. And Kellyanne Conway was on TV this week, and I think it had exactly the right attitude. She said, we're behind in the polls, and that's a good thing because it's going to make us work harder. So that's the attitude. Don't pretend the polls are wrong. Go out and try to change the polls.
All right, so Jason, if the polls hold where they are today, what does this election look like?
Well, I think if the polls hold where they are today, then it's going to be a very rough night for the Trump campaign. But and that's my contention. And Rich, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the polls are wrong. I just think that they're a lot closer than they appear to be. I mean, I think you have to go in and you have to look at the crosstabs. You have to figure out where it is that, why is it that Hillary is still less than 50% in a majority of the polls? If she's spending millions and millions of dollars, I've seen estimates of over $100 million, to $0, and still can't break into the double digits ahead of Trump, then I think they need to be worried as well.
Well, the findings have been pretty robust across all polling, as Chris referenced earlier, and the battleground states actually have shown 8, 9 double-digit point leads, which suggests maybe that advertising is having an effect. So again, I don't think there's any percentage for the Trump campaign to deny what's going on. They need to go out and fight better. And if he has weeks like he's had this week, where he hasn't had unnecessary controversies besides the campaign shakeup, and he stops shooting himself in the foot every week and has unnecessary controversies, he can find a bottom and maybe begin to gain some ground.
All right, Chris, to a guy who's keeping track, there is now just over 11 weeks to go to Election Day. I would ask you, can Trump close the gap? But I'm sure you will tell me, as Rich just did, that yes, he can. Will he? What is his strategy? What does he have to do to close the gap?
Well, what he has to do is create a coalition, the likes of which we have not seen in American politics, but one that many people have tried to put together. He needs Ross Perot's coalition. He needs a lot of blue-collar white voters who are Democrats and who are independents. He needs to build this coalition. It can be done, but he's got to get cracking.
All right, thanks to all three of you for joining us live on this Friday night.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
All right, Donald Trump's campaign releasing its first political ad of the 2016 general election, and it doesn't pull any punches. But is it effective? The ad men are here to break it down.
Collecting Social Security benefits, skipping the line. Our border open
10 days. Watch.
In Hillary Clinton's America, the system stays rigged against Americans. Syrian refugees flood in. Illegal immigrants convicted of committing crimes get to stay, collecting Social Security benefits, skipping the line. Our border open, it's more of the same, but worse. Donald Trump's America is secure. Terrorists and dangerous criminals kept out. The border secure. Our families safe. Change that makes America safe again. Donald Trump for president.
All right, Michael Meslansky is a pollster and Republican communications expert, and Bernard Whitman is a former Clinton pollster and Democratic strategist. Michael, I'll start with you first. Was this ad, is it effective?
Well, for a campaign that's had a lot of trouble over the last couple of weeks with discipline and with message, what this ad shows is that he's getting back to the kind of core message that gave him a campaign to begin with. He knows that there's a significant percentage of the population that believes we're headed in the wrong direction as a country. They're afraid about immigration. They're afraid about terrorism. In true Trump style, he's got a very simple message. It's very clear. You know, if you're on the fence and you want change in this country, it's a message that's going to resonate.
Okay, and what do you make of that, Bernard? Will it resonate with voters?
I beg to differ. Trump's kinder general apology tour lasted for about a half second. This is classic Trump. It's divisive, it's negative, it's fear-mongering, it's race-baiting, it's immigrant-hating, it's full of half-truths and some lies. It has absolutely no substance. It has absolutely no, yes, I absolutely can. The idea that immigrants are getting Social Security benefits, not true. They pay in, they don't get benefits. Deportations under Obama are actually up. He had deported almost 500,000 people last year,
you know
which
what,
is
Bernard,
more.
Bernard, you can argue.
His deportations. 2.5 million deportations are more than the last 19 presidents before George W. Bush combined.
All right, Michael.
Look, you can argue the facts all that you want. The question was not whether it's technically factually accurate, it's whether it's going to resonate. And the reality is that if you go out and you talk to Trump voters and you talk to a lot of voters out there who are unsure who they want to vote for, they know they don't like Hillary Clinton. And what they go out there and they say is they say that they're afraid. They say that they're afraid for their future, and this message is going to work.
Michael, but let me
audience.
ask you, though, specifically about the ad spending. We know the Trump campaign is spending $4 million on this. Let's compare that to what Clinton is spending. And by the way, those are going to be airing in 4 key battleground states: Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Ohio. But contrast that to Clinton's ad buys. You're looking at her campaign has purchased more than $54 million in battleground states going back to May 17th.
Well, no one would say that that Donald Trump has run a smart campaign from a purely political perspective so far. This is, you know, if you're on his campaign team, you're saying, look, this is the beginning. It's a smart move for them to start spending money. They've got a long way to go. I mean, they may have turned so many voters off in the last couple of weeks that they can't get them back. But if you want to pull them back, which you have to do in order to win,
we got to leave it there.
This is where you have to start.
Pretty good week for Trump this week.
The truth does matter. When you start to spin lies into truths, that is absolutely ridiculous. And I think that, you know, it's going to resonate to the ever-shrinking base in a week that he's had a complete free fall.
All right, well, it's been a busy week around here, a busy week for politics, and our hearts to everyone as you recover in the state of Louisiana. I'm an LSU Tiger. Thanks for watching. That's it for the Kelly File. I'm Sandra Smith. Good night.